O meu nome é Tiago Rodrigues e trabalho aqui no Teatro Nacional Dona Maria II. Obrigado por terem vindo. Gostava, antes de mais, de vos dizer que, como foi anunciado e provavelmente, espero eu, saberão, infelizmente, por recomendação médica, Peter Brook não pôde viajar a Portugal para acompanhar este espetáculo e, portanto, não estará connosco nesta conversa. Fizemos todos os esforços e espero que tenham surtido efeito para anunciar o melhor possível que esta conversa não se realizaria já como inicialmente previsto com o Peter Brook no âmbito da recepção que fazemos do espetáculo Battlefield, que se apresentou ontem à noite e hoje à noite também inserido na programação do LEFFEST'. De qualquer das formas, a conversa vai realizar-se, tal como anunciado, com um membro do elenco do espetáculo, McNeill, que trabalha com Peter Brook há 10 anos e que nos poderá falar não só do espetáculo, como do processo de trabalho com Peter Brook. Dizer-vos ainda que vamos fazer a conversa em inglês. Nós temos um tempo relativamente limitado para fazer esta conversa, depois o elenco prepara-se para o espetáculo e, portanto, o que eu propunha, mas entendam isto como uma proposta e podemos agora resolver esse assunto, o que eu propunha era que fizéssemos a conversa só em inglês, que não tomássemos demasiado tempo para tradução, a menos que sintamos que na plateia há necessidade de fazer essa tradução para português e aí eu presto-me a esse serviço. Poderíamos fazer a conversa completamente em inglês? Fantástico. Pronto, quem não perceba português, suponho que estará de acordo portanto, não se exprimiu agora, mas estará de acordo e portanto vamos partir com esta premissa. Dizer-vos ainda que, embora o Peter Brook não esteja, ontem falando com o elenco e nomeadamente com o McNeill, que está mesmo ali ao lado à nossa espera para entrar, fizemos a brincadeira de que era engraçado que ele entrasse, que eu anunciasse afinal o Peter Brook veio e que ele entrasse no lugar do Peter Brook quando não tem absolutamente nada a ver fisicamente com o Peter Brook, embora artisticamente esteja muito próximo. E achámos tanta piada à ideia e sabendo ainda por cima que o Peter Brook, diz-me o Jared, gostaria muito desse equívoco e como estamos hoje a gravar esta conversa, o que eu vos propunha era que eu apresentasse o Jared como se fosse o Peter Brook. Ele entra e nós dávamos uma ovação de pé ao Peter Brook, ok? Portanto, se estiverem de acordo, vamos fazer assim. Neste momento eu introduzo, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Peter Brook. Are you walking as slow as Peter?
No, it's yeah, that was a bit faster. It's a bit faster.
Jared, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
So we taped it, and you're gonna get the tape, okay. And then you'll show it.
I can edit it.
Yes.
That's fine.
Hopefully it will be interesting all the time.
No, Peter was, I just want to say, Peter very much wished to be here, wishes to be here. And, but the question came with this discussion of how do you confront the tremendous disappointment of me sitting in this chair? And so, so now I hope we've set the bar so that any answer now can sort of shine as the, you know.
So as we rehearsed right. Yesterday night at Pinocchio, the restaurant, it's an open conversation. So it's mainly up to the people to ask questions, to just engage in talking and learning and satisfying their curiosity. I have one first question, so that we get like a very easy question out of the way, and all the smart questions can come from the audience. You've been working with Peter Brook for 10 years. First day of rehearsal.
Wow.
What happens?
No, I think it's always different. I'm trying to think back to the very, very first day. it is very much like the way when I met them, they were in New York doing a workshop for a piece called 11 and 12. And they, I had a friend, I was working at a moving company at the time, picking boxes. And a friend of mine had called and he said, I have a friend that's downtown. He said, go and meet my friend. They're doing a workshop. Go down to this theater and you're going to go inside. And I said, okay, I will, but I'm wearing a uniform now because I'm at work. And he said, don't worry about it. He said, go down and meet him. And so I went down to the theater. And I came inside and I sat in the lobby and sort of no one was, I had camouflage shorts and my t-shirt for the moving company, it said, you will recommend us, which was good. And I sat in the lobby and sort of, and there was just stillness, silence in this lobby. No one came and said, oh, do you want tea or anything? Of course not. And then the door opens and this small man walks inside, and suddenly from the walls it seemed that people came and they appeared and they're offering tea and coffee and would you like this and he said no, and he went through and went into the theater and it was all over in a second and I just sort of stayed there sitting there because I said, okay, who am I waiting for? And my friend came another 20 minutes later and he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm waiting for whoever. He said, go inside. He said, go inside. And I walked inside this room, and on the stage was a circle of about 20 chairs, and it was an international group. So different, everyone speaking different languages, different everything, different sensibilities. And you came into this circle, and they were already sort of in the midst of doing improvisation, something, I have no idea. And I'd come in, and the first thing, Mary Elaine, actually, who's been working with Peter for years and years, Mary Elaine looked at me, and she had a page of script, and she said, she just looked me up and down, and she said, okay, you'll go next. And I said, I don't know what that means. And they said, you go into the circle now and you're going to read this. And I went into the circle, I began reading this text, and it's sort of, it's difficult because you really have no idea what it is that you're reading. And about halfway through it, they took the paper away and then they said, now you know, now you improvise. So again, now, and so you're sort of left with, without any sort of academic, very thorough knowledge of sort of what you are speaking. But all you have is a sort of whatever you're sort of bringing into that circle with you, and however you're going to just really, these words and your own interpretation. So I think the first day, to go back, the first day is very much like this. It's sort of, it feels very much like a circle of chairs and a lot of unknowing, It's a circle of chairs and sort of a world of unknown that you're going to embark on. It's sort of, here's pages, here's stories from your own life, here are your own impressions, here's your own histories. And because the group come from so many different backgrounds, that becomes a really rich experience in those first days, where it's just sort of sharing from a place of where you come from, and sort of finding where you belong within this group, and in whatever sort of project or story you're trying to tell. So it's very there's I don't say that there's anything more right or more wrong about a way to enter into work, but I also think that there's something of me that says that even no matter how much sort of academic preparation, it would not be sufficient for that first step. Yeah.
One of the things that I'll just... Só faço mais uma pergunta enquanto vocês preparam as vossas. Se calhar podemos subir um bocadinho a luz da sala, Pedro, por favor. Fantástico. There's something recurrent in the writings of Peter Brook about the unknown that you're speaking of facing the beginning of a creative process with accepting that you don't know how to do it, where you're heading, and that of course that creates this friction of not being that kind of director that knows it all in the first day and can explain the sets and what they should do and tell the actors where to go, etc. But with Battlefield, you're coming back to, revisiting Mahabharata. So you're coming back to something that was created in Decisive 30 years ago and that totally changed the theatrical landscape all over the world. How much of that not knowing how to go back to the place you know was there in the beginning of Battlefield, or was it clear where you were heading?
No, I mean, I think that's definitely a question that, you know, Peter would be able to answer better than me. I wasn't there.
He was invited first, it's true.
He was invited first.
But here you are.
You haven't changed your
But
questions.
you're very welcome. No, I didn't have the time.
You have a whole list and you're like, I can't ask 2 through 8 of these questions. It's useless.
I cut most of the questions and still the ones I have are for Peter Brook, yes.
I know, you know, I know that.
But you were there at the beginning of Battlefield.
I was there at the beginning of Battlefield, and there was a lot of, you know, Peter's Mahabharata is, you know, the 30 years or more. But the story, the Mahabharata, this is thousands of years. This is a story that, you know, it's one of the oldest stories ever told. So the fact that there are, you know, 30 years later, you could find another question that can rest on that landscape is not a surprise. You know, it's something that has endured for thousands of years, this story, and being passed and shared in many different ways. I think that, you know, the specifics of that process of distillation, of sort of coming from this, you know, 9-hour, what they say, epic, and then coming to this, you know, our version, which I don't know how many have seen it. So I don't want to talk and sort of give everything away. But I know that as far as the return, there's something in it that is guided by a question. That is guided by, and a question can endure, you know. If you sort of start this road, then and you have the answer that you want to reach, you know. You ask a question. A lot of times, I think we're guilty of doing this. We ask a question, you know, we expect a certain answer. We ask a question and we have the answer that we want, you know, and we try to work towards that answer. We try to, instead of sort of saying, here's the sort of guiding question that will endure through this work. And I think that the thing that I know that Peter asks himself all the time is this thing of the relevance, and the thing of the, you know, it's not just the strength of a piece. It's also, in a way, where does this piece sit in the present time, the present culture, and what conversations does it speak to? And so I think that sort of the question of relevance. The Mahabharata was this sort of 9-hour epic where we're talking, you know, it's discussing this whole story of how this war can begin and what contributes to it, and these very human emotions that go on between a family at war. And it brings them to this sort of extinction level event. And then and Battlefield, what we're doing now is, you know, it's focusing on the questions after that. It's focusing on the questions of you know, what do you do with that? How do you sort of continue? How do you, and why should you? Why should you want to continue? Why should you? You know, what is there if you've done this thing that you can recognize that you have you've played a part in these deeds that have destroyed, you know, these brothers, uncles, cousins. It really has destroyed everything. And now you're tasked with the question, but you have to rebuild, you have to continue. And there's these questions, why? Why? Just as there were questions before the war, why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And it's no, you know, I know that Peter once said to me, he said, you know, with every piece, I've sat down before the work began, and I've sat down and I've planned and I've written notes and made in my mind and every sort of plan. And then he said, and inevitably, once we begin the work, I've never stuck to a single plan I've ever made, he said. So I think it's not the idea of there's nothing to prepare, there's nothing, but you lay this groundwork and then you enter into it with an enduring question, a deep enduring question of yourself, and I think Peter enters into it with that, and Mary Elaine for her own reasons, and then everyone that we perform with the same way, and that sort of aids in carrying it out. I have no idea if something, you know, sometimes a silence can be, you know, and sometimes a silence can be, So you're very kind, and I'm not going to try to guess what your silences are, but
you can make noise.
You can make noise.
Alguém tem perguntas? Peter, thank you so much. So you were talking about relevance, enquanto pensam. Há microfones aí na sala, portanto quem quiser fazer uma pergunta, basta levantar a mão e o microfone vai ter convosco. You were talking about relevance. How much of, say, newspaper first pages come into the rehearsal room? So how much of current times sort of get into the discussion of this, you know, thousands of years old story? Right. How much of that is present?
Well, it's not something that's sort of, you know, sitting around and obviously we're all people living in the world, so in a way it's sort of the normal talk that happens, and when you come in and meet people, and it's hard to divorce the two when you're doing that work every day, and then you're living in the world knowing what's going on. And especially this piece has been touring for 2 years. This piece, it's been in 2 years, you know, I'm from the US, by the way, so I can say in 2 years how much the world has changed, you know. You know, we began the piece, and you know, we came from Paris going to Singapore, and this was sort of right after we left Paris, and then there were these sort of attacks in the Bataclan in Paris, and then when the piece came to New York, there was some pipe bombing in New York, and so it's a very strange piece as far as the current events, because you're carrying this around and you're sort of meeting people. So it's hard to divorce the two. You're obviously doing this work. It's not sort of something where you're going to sit down and say, everybody lay out your front page newspaper and say, how does this apply? But it's impossible to sort of keep the peace, or you're asking something. You're saying, if you said, what is justice? If you ask this to yourself every day, you might come with a different answer every day. And that answer would be dictated by your experience in the world every day. And it would continually shape your definition of this word justice. What is that? And so moving the piece, meeting the people, and sort of this sort of heartbreaking point of meeting people and realizing how many of the conversations are the same, you know, that we're going from Japan and China and coming to South America and then coming here and going to America. And so many of the conversations that we have, you know, you think you're hearing all this disagreement and discord and no. But so many of the people, the conversations are so similar that it makes you really wonder. You know, what's. So yeah, I mean that's a long answer to that, but it's one and the same. It's one and the same.
Ali duas pessoas.
Hello.
Tem o microfone.
Hi. Hi. Since Peter's not here, this is a question for the Jared that's there,
Okay.
which I think is maybe your specialty.
Oh.
Your specialty is Jared.
Yeah.
So, how would you characterize yourself as an actor or as a person, as a pre-Peter Brook and post-Peter Brook? So in the last 10 years, what has changed in you from having done the work with him and the process?
Well, yeah, I certainly don't. I certainly don't, in my mind, sort of break my life into pre and post Peter Brook. I think that would be dangerous. But it is true that, you know, that you know, I don't know how everything would be different in 10 years if not the thing of working with the company. I know that there are practical things that I've gotten a chance to see a lot of the world, and the stories that we've been telling over those 10 years have been very moving for me. That's funny. This is the question that most applies to me. It's the most difficult. It's the most difficult question to answer. I think it's difficult because I think I'm still very much in it. One of these things, I mean, even thinking about this piece with the last 2 years, you know, and every tour has sort of been this sort of year and a half, 2 year moment in your life. And you come into it. I remember the first time, and this maybe will illustrate it, the first time working with Peter was this 11 and 12, and I'd really never been out of the US very much. I'd been to Russia, I think, for, you know, a couple of months. And then, you know, all of a sudden I was going to Poland to do a workshop, and then we're going to go to Paris, and these are places I've never seen in my life. It was this whole growing thing. I remember the first day in Poland, I was sort of in this little apartment, and I had a window on a square, and they had put enough sort of groceries inside for me to the first days, you know, so you can get acclimated. And I think I spent the first like week like afraid to leave. I was like looking out this window, like, what am I doing here? What do I, you know, and eating crackers in the thing. But after this whole sort of, you know, in that year sort of opened my eyes in a way, because we were working with people from different countries, from Israel, Palestine, from Mali, from France, Poland, you know, and you're sort of, and then you're taking this thing around the world. I'd never seen any of this, you know, and just to imagine, you know, how the world is, you know, it's so big, you know, and then and then after a time you go to places, you know. I remember the first time you go to a place like Australia or something, and and then, you know, it's so funny that you can go back to the same city the second time, and you'll say, oh yeah, I've seen it, you know. Now I don't have to worry about it, you know. It's like so quick, you know. But after this whole time, and then the last performance we did, we were somewhere in Italy, and then everyone's getting on an airplane to go home. And I went back home, and I landed, and I was at the airport, and I was going back home to see my parents in Connecticut, and I was calling, they weren't picking up. And then I said, okay, I'm taking a taxi. So I got a taxi, and I went all the way home. And I went, and I rang the doorbell, and my mother opened the door, and she said, you're home. And I said, yes, I've been gone for two years. What do you mean? And she said, she said, we haven't prepared anything. She said, but there's some cold chicken in the refrigerator and some rice. And she said, you can heat that up. And so it seemed like this tour, it was 2 years, and then it came to this moment, and I was sitting in front of a microwave watching a plate spin with chicken and rice on it. I'm not sure exactly what that story says, but something about that encapsulates the experience of one piece of that. And then you think for 10 years, I think the real thing, it doesn't so much have to do with the piece or the works. It has to do with, the thing of being able to do some sort of storytelling and being able to, the people. It really has to do with a lot with the people. I think the most striking thing in those years has been the fact of how many divisions we sort of believe there are, and really, like I said, how many of those conversations are the same. I don't know how better to explain that, but yeah.
Hello.
You saw we lost one. You saw we lost one there.
We lost one
We
person?
lost one
Yeah, I'm
person.
counting them. It's fine. At 10, we just shut off the
Right.
lights.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your presence and to save the moment. Someday they told me when I read that Peter Brook was to be here, I said, one of my gods came to the earth, now I can see him. No, I didn't.
Right, no,
I don't know, it's
just a
good.
man.
I hope that he will be good, his health can be good. I was once in a student theater in Coimbra, not here in Lisbon, with Teok and Sitag. And then we studied Peter Brook. And later I saw the Mahabharata, and I'm connected with Indian studies and practicing something from India and other countries from the West. And every time I give some classes, I always show the Mahabharata, the original one of Peter Brook. And it changed my point of view of study philosophy, religions, and everything else, especially in the day by day, my life and the life that I have with in the society, in this violent society. The representation of your fellows and you, and in that time was fantastic. And it changed the mind to think about the spirituality that is connected with Mahabharata and especially with the Bhagavad Gita, where is the battlefield. I just ask to you if when you represent when you study with Peter Brook, that changed your heart something, and with your experience all over the world, it can be something that some people can see that the violence is inside of us and must be studied, not only showed, and maybe if something changed inside of the actors that do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow. Wow.
Forgot it.
I hope that there's a change inside in doing the work, but I No, because I think it's difficult to speak on the sort of the place of violence or the place of I don't know. It's difficult because I don't want to sort of dictate any sort of any personal questioning, Yeah. But I know for me, of course, yeah, that yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
So these days, how do you keep, how do you keep yourself engaged in theater? In the conflict of is this really important? Is this really affecting people? And we talk a lot about relevance, but one of my biggest struggles these days, the world today is, how do we, are we having an impact on people? Are we actually, is this helping the world to move in the, in a more value-creating way? Is the kind of work that I'm doing, creating that? So, for me, Peter Brook's work is, I've always been able to tap into some kind of, depth of mankind. And but I want to hear from you, in your experience working it with him, how do you go from, and without being too theoretical, because I feel like, this question is a little bit, but really, can we still believe in this work that theater is, it matters, and, in the world like today, and how does the individual, whether it's the performer or the audience, how can what changes does it need to occur for that change to really manifest right now? So, I don't know.
And you don't want a theoretical answer.
Yeah, do your best, man. Do your best.
Oh,
Welcome to Lisbon.
yeah, that's nice. No, I know how, I don't know the answer to that question. If it matters, I mean, you could ask anybody if it matters to them. If it doesn't matter to them, I don't think there's any way to sort of make something that objectively matters or speaks, or especially not in a theater. It's sort of impossible. But I do think that question belongs just as much. The trick is the question belongs just as much outside of a theater as it does inside. I don't think necessarily that you spend all my time thinking about how this work is going to matter on stage, and if it's going to matter what I'm doing on stage to the people that come to see the show. But that I don't know that to me, I don't know that means so much if you're not asking that question once you leave. If you're not asking that question, So for me, as far as working on stage, it's not so much only about does this matter? It's about what carrying that outside, and what matters. It's a person, I think if you're searching for the meaning, or if you're searching for the gravity of your work, or where can it sit and truly attach, I think a lot of times, you may not be able to find that on simply on the stage, right? You find those meanings, and the relevance, speaks to the wider world, and outside.
And Jared, just coming from there to a more concrete sort of day-to-day level of work, how does that translate into a process? Let's say, how do you as an actor feel that working with Peter Brook is unique? Of course, besides the depth, the humanity, the knowledge, this sort of wise approach and careful approach to creating pieces, but where are you as an actor challenged differently when you compare it to other work that you've been doing? Where do you say, like, well, with Peter Brook, this is bound to happen, this problem is bound to be there for me as an actor, technically or personally, or right. Where are the sort of the crossroads of the work?
I think there are ego,
Yours?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. not Peter Brook's
No,
ego.
no, no,
Okay.
no.
That would be a valid answer.
That could be
also.
a valid
Yeah.
answer, yeah. But no, with Peter, I'd say, patience. That work is very patient, because I think that work is, it's almost this thing of giving someone something. If you sort of, you show someone something, you give it to them, and then they take it, but it doesn't really, attach to them, because they've just been given something. They've been given the answer. They've been given the way. What you start this work, and it's not someone saying, here you're going to do this, or this is what this means, or this is what There's a almost endless patience, it seems, because I can say that in Paris, with this piece, Battlefield, I think I spent maybe 3 weeks performing the piece without really knowing what I was saying. I mean, I knew what I was saying on a very surface level, but everything else I could feel was very much pretending to elevate myself to the place where I could speak, on these themes. And so all of that is just time, and patience, and it is a patience to allow, where you feel allowed to sort of, you have to make the decision. You have to make the decision yourself of how far you're going to enter into that. And so I think also what it does then is, because it's patient, because it's not someone who's sort of content to give you the way and give you the road laid out for you so easy, what it forces you to do is sort of, you're always then coming back to question your own self and your own understandings, and how close am I, what does this mean? You're saying, like I said, you say, what is justice? And you say one day, what is justice? What is justice? You say it every time. You could say, this is just what is justice? But no, these are these.
And how does Peter Brook react to that? So we're in a sort of studio rehearsing room situation. Right. You go for the what is justice as a question.
Yeah.
How will he sort of point a clear way? Will he confront you with your own questions? What's the approach on talking about your performance?
Many times he'll tell a story. Sometimes it'll be very soft. You have no idea. You come in the morning. He'll come take your hand. He'll say, when I was a boy, and we'll walk around the room. And then later that night, you'll wake up and you'll say, what did that mean? What did he mean by that? Why did he tell me to read this book? What is this? What he's not just talking about. And the other thing is he's just, it's listening. In this there's if I remember, this is again ego, my ego. The first time working with Peter, I swear I've learned other things since then, but every story seems to belong to the first time. But I was ready to sort of make my entrance. This is the ego. Make my entrance. I was standing and I was going. I had to come on, and I had these lines to say, and I said, this is going to be so good. It's going to be so great. And I was waiting. And finally the moment came, and I had planned it out. I said I was going to run on. I was going to fall on my knees. I was going to say the thing, and everybody was going to weep, and and the moment came, and I ran on, and I took 2 steps onto the stage, and I heard stop, and it was Peter, and he was sitting in the chairs, and I know he was there, but in 2 seconds he was standing next to me, and he said, that the greatest injustice that we can do, he said, if you think what you're doing before you do it, he said, you're missing a great opportunity. He said, you're missing an opportunity to share something with us. He said, you're missing an opportunity to share with the people you're working with. But he said, the most is that you're missing an opportunity to find something in yourself. You're missing an opportunity to give way to some new part or piece or parcel of understanding in you in coming into this. And so he said, don't do that, And I'm being very kind about it, He's very, incisive. But I think as far as, that's what I mean about ego, the thing that you confront, because it's very much the way, it's very much focused on defining a group, finding a group of people. And with Toshi that we have here, and he's playing the drum in this piece, but finding that group is very important, and you can't do that if you're sort of caught up with these things like, you know, ego and my part, my job, what am I going to do, how to, you know. And so a lot of the biggest confrontation, I think, that a lot, I swear, I think it's like invisible to you until you're in front of it, how much ego you're sort of weighed down by. And so it's always that confrontation of being able to, and I think also with him is this curiosity that he's able to sort of, everything is tried in that room, you know. Everybody likes to talk about this thing of sort of, they say the term minimalism, you know, and they say, you know, and this sort of this idea, you know, of you're going to walk into this room and it's going to be like a wizard doing tricks, you know. But part of it is very much, you know, I think he's turning 94. You know, I think part of this thing is he's just been doing it for a long time. You know, and part of the way that he looks, he's very clear on, you know, some of the work is very technical. Some of it is, what if you sit down, you know? What if you stand up? What if you turn? What, you know, very much it's just throwing. And then also every idea is sort of tried. It's not the thing of landing here and we're doing the minimalist thing. But there's an idea in those first weeks of you're throwing everything in. I mean, really, we've seen, you know, crazy ideas, you know, going to a theater and what if you you know, made your entrance from up there, and it's sort of, the question is asked without having any capability of doing that, you know. There's no way that can work, but we're gonna try it. We're gonna, let's what if you know, what if we had you know, a tape recorder attached to your back or something, you know. It's every single idea is tried and sort of thrown onto the floor, and then it's this process, you know, from this process of sort of combing away until you're left with something. Yeah.
We have time because you have a performance tonight, right?
Yes.
So you have to prepare. We have time for a last couple of questions if there's people here.
Hello, thank you for doing this. What is the easiest and most difficult thing about storytelling?
Ooh.
Okay, let's just collect a few questions so that you can sum it up. Yeah.
I've been answering.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi.
Oh. Huh?
There,
Here.
yes.
Hi. I'd like to know, you said you're from Connecticut.
Yes.
And I think here in Europe now we have an idea there's a Portuguese theater, Spanish theater, French theater, British theater. I'm afraid that besides New York, we don't know much about theater in the States.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting for all of us to know where did you study?
In New York.
Okay, and in which theaters you grew up as an actor, and how did you get to work with Peter Brook? What brought you there? Because from there on, you told us about it.
Okay, can I exercise some discipline? We still have two questions, one here and the gentleman there, and then we're over.
Okay. Hello. In a work of this magnitude, so many characters, so many episodes, I suppose that it is impossible to bring answers. Probably it's the main goal would be to make the audience leave, or the reader leave, with numberless questions so that he thinks and finds ways. So this brings me to the work of the actor. The actor is the person who has to illuminate and bring reality and sense to all these many different characters. How do you adjust, you yourself as an actor, to the fact that there are victims, predators, in-betweens, and that you perhaps don't get the role that you admire, either in terms of corresponding to your personal ideals, or awesome, that impresses you, that creates some degree of revulsion. You may be getting a part which doesn't mean much. The person is mean, is an in-between, go-between. So how do you adjust this person that you are to the need to bring to life and have some empathy to the character you want to portray, you need to portray?
Okay. Last question there.
Jared,
Yeah.
in a world where you can be a hostage of all this speed and cell phones and everything that doesn't matter for theater, if you put it that way, do you, as a group, contribute to a level of concentration? Do you have your own ritual to create the energy to act?
Okay, we have the challenges of storytelling. We have your curricula in American theater. We have how do you relate and create empathy with characters that might be far or very close or in between your own personality. And we have how do you get zen for the performance.
Oh, wow.
One answer for
One
the
answer.
four questions.
One answer.
No, go ahead.
All right. Do you want me to keep it in that order, or do you want me? Am I allowed to mix it up to make it more? Okay. You're allowed to mix it up. Okay.
Yeah, you are.
Cool. I was born in
That's a great way to start.
Connecticut, 19. I think the roots, as far as maybe the coming up in theater, very much have to do with my family's from the South. My family's from sort of Kentucky, Alabama area in America, and we grew up always telling stories. My grandfather was a huge storyteller. My grandfather was a preacher, so he was always telling stories, and he's always And my uncles were they were all these brothers, and they always used to sort of all together joking around, telling old stories and telling stories about growing up, like hiding a rock under a pillow, and then I don't know, anything. And so I guess the storytelling was always a part of it. As far as coming up and ending up in New York, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be. I always loved writing, and I think I wanted to be a movie director or something. I had all these, or a detective or something. These are my childhood. But always something big, something. And really getting into it. It all sort of, you just sort of fall backwards through life, and you sort of end up in a position where this thing finds you. My siblings, my family is very much a sports family, So, I was the youngest, so by the time I sort of came into the picture, all the trophies had been won, sort of. So it was sort of just like, okay, there's got to be another corner to occupy, in this thing. And I remember when I was sort of like not great in school. I wasn't, I was a trickster or something. So I was leaving. I was going out of school one day, and this teacher caught me, and he said, you're gonna get kicked out of school if you keep leaving like this. He said, so we're doing this play, he said, and we only have girls. We need a boy. And he said, you don't have to do anything. You just got to walk on, and then you got to read this thing, and then you walk off, And if you do that, then you graduate. And I was like, no problem. So I, I went and did it, and every day I'd just show up, and then I'd read this thing, I'd walk on, read the thing, and then go off, And then I got really into it, because I was sort of like, I can't mess this up, Everybody seemed more excited for it than me, My family of storytellers are like, oh yeah, So I'm going home, I'm trying to figure out how do you memorize things, and I'm looking at my favorite movies and just trying to memorize, stupid, anything. Like listening to tapes, and trying to memorize anything. Just the memorization was the only focus for this thing. I just have to remember these words, And I did this whole thing, and then on the day of the piece, it's one performance, of course. And so everybody's there, and, they're like, blah, 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 okay, we're going to do it. We start the show, it's going on, and I'm getting ready for my moment. Again, I'm getting ready for my moment. And the moment comes. And I started to walk on stage, and there was sort of a big steel pipe, here, and I hit my toe on it really hard. And it made this huge sound, this clanging sound, and I fell out onto the stage. And then I sort of limped to the front with and I just started saying the thing. And then I turned around and I limped off the stage, and I was like, oh, how do you mess that up? I was like, how do you mess that up? You just walk on and do it and go. And I was so devastated because I was like, I was really like my brother. I was like, oh man, they're so good at everything. I was like, I can't even do this. And after the show, this teacher who had pulled me in, who had roped me into it, he comes up to me and he says, oh, it was great. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I love what you did with that limp. And I was like, what? So I think my first entry into it, as far as the allowed vulnerability of this, was this, and this is actually an interesting thing, was this idea that you can screw it up, and actually that owning your mistakes, or actually somehow you can turn a mistake, an error, or something that's missing, something that's lacking, something that's and actually it can be the thing that can elevate the work to something that you never even imagined, that it's sort of taking on a life of its own. I didn't think in those terms. When I was younger, I just said, oh, you can screw up and you won't get in trouble. But so that's coming into it. And then I came to New York.
I have the feeling that just before you arrived in New York, you answered the 4 questions already with just that story.
Did I? The story, yeah, storytelling
well,
and everything.
The problem of creating empathy, you
That's
just
true.
create an accident, right?
Your
career in American theater,
That's
just
true.
yeah, you
These are the
go for it,
beginnings,
for
right?
it. You arrived in New York. We have time.
I'm not going to tell the whole story.
Show.
I'm not going to tell the whole story. But the storytelling, I think storytelling is just that. It's storytelling. We do it every day. Everybody does it. It's not. I don't think it's something that, if you have a bad day and you come home and someone says, what happened? And you tell the story. And a lot of times when you tell that story, you go back there. So if you're saying, oh, my boss was asking for these reports, and I hate when she comes in and she says, oh, man, you do her voice and you do her posture and your face makes up and everything. When you're telling a story, the same as if you tell a story to a child, you don't think about it, but you're telling this story and then the wolf comes in and you do these things that are very, it's a language that belongs to us. It's a language that is inherent in we're storytellers, You know how to tell a story. So it's not so much, I think, this thing of adding and finding, but there's a lot of sort of, it's more a work of getting out of your own way.
Are we missing any of the answers?
Hold on.
The empathy one, I think it's
Was
the
empathy
most.
okay? That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and the challenges of storytelling, that's yeah, it's nice. It's clear you have a problem with entrances. Since high school.
Yeah.
You didn't have Peter Brook there, but
Right.
but you had the accident
Right,
anyway.
exactly.
To fight your ego. Hey, guys, I mean, we could stay here and talk for hours. That's for sure. Everybody forgot about Peter Watt. We would stay here for hours with you, but you really have to perform in a moment.
Yes,
So
yes.
thank you so much for your generosity, for being there. Obrigado a todos por terem estado presentes e agora, se calhar, eu pedia-vos para fazermos o negativo do que fizemos na entrada. Eu vou dizer o nome verdadeiro do ator verdadeiro que esteve aqui connosco generosamente esta hora, para lá do tempo que tínhamos inicialmente combinado, e nós aplaudimos para ele poder fazer uma saída. We hope you're better at exiting than entering, okay?
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jared McNeill.
Thank you. Obrigado. Obrigado.